Well, today's Memorial Day, and I'm so excited. We're going to chat about a really cool story that Poppy just told me here. So first, you fought in Vietnam as a Marine.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about what you saw there and some of the experiences that you had in Vietnam. And what did that look like? I mean, one of the things that people always talk about Agent Orange and how horrible that is. But in your point of view, I mean, that was like the best thing that
God
happened.
bless Agent Orange. Yes.
Why is
Yeah.
that?
Well, we were screwed. I mean, everybody was just getting wiped out constantly. Gooks would pop up and kill three Marines, and then they're gone. We go after them. They're nowhere. They're in the bush someplace. And
And the
they're
bushes, I mean, the terrain, I mean,
a triple canopy, 15-foot grass, elephant grass.
and so what did Agent Orange do for you? I mean, what happened?
It was like overnight. We were on an operation, and we were about 1,500 gooks and 200 of us. And we were getting our butts handed to us, and they just started flying those C-130s over us. And I don't know how long it was because everything's 60 years ago. But I remember that all at once, all that was there was sticks, tree limbs. It was all gone. And we were able to fight our way out, but that was just one of dozens of times. And so I don't believe I would have lived if it hadn't been for Agent Orange. Now I've got symptoms from the Agent Orange now, cancer and stuff, but I got 55, 60 years of, having kids and going to the lake and fishing and, climbing the mountains and hunting elk. And, this is a life I would have never got.
Yeah,
And it's wonderful. And I got nothing but, it's a bad thing in other respects, but as far as I'm concerned, it was a good thing for me,
yeah,
Agent Orange.
yeah. It
Yeah.
really saved your life out
Yeah. So
there.
now
Yeah,
I'm at the end of my life. I got some problems because of it, but geez, 60 years of wonderment is well worth it,
yeah.
you know.
So one of the cool stories you told me around the campfire yesterday, yeah, was about a knife. It's actually about that knife over there,
Yeah.
back there, and this is going back, way before Vietnam. So
Yeah.
can you just tell the
Iwo
story?
Jima.
Yeah,
Iwo Jima. There were only about 50 survivors from the initial from who made the landing on Iwo Jima. 6,000 Marines died in like 2 days. It was horrible. And they uh, did a banquet thing for the surviving Marines, in Hawaii. American Legion and the VFW sponsored them to come out to Hawaii and have a banquet and a celebration for what they'd done. And then they flew them out to Iwo Jima, and there was a big banquet and news reporters talking to them about what they remember and so forth. And that night, this one old guy is out walking on the beach where he figured he landed at on the Mike boats. And
and how many years after was this? Yeah.
oh, this was just recently, it's like a few years ago.
So how many years had passed, from the actual event to them walking on the beach there after the banquet?
Yeah,
And
I'm going to guess Iwo Jima was about 1945 or 44, maybe.
mhm.
Just guessing. Don't hold me to that. But so this was 2014, I'm thinking. So 14 plus
It's like 70, what's that? Yeah, 70 years later.
70 years later.
Yeah.
Okay, this old guy. So he was in his 80s at the time. And so he's walking on the beach, moonlight, nice, perfect time. And he's out there and he thinks he sees a quarter laying there on the sand. So he goes to pick it up and it's the butt end of a K-bar. He pulls it out. It's a K-bar from that era. So somebody lost their K-bar when they got on the beach, and it finally worked its way up through the sand. And there it was, right when he was standing there walking, which is incredible in itself. So he pulls this K-bar out of the sand, wraps it up in a towel, and sneaks it back to the States. And when he's dying, he asks his son to take the K-bar and find a Marine who will appreciate what it is and make sure he gets it. And so years go by, and the guy, it's in a drawer, but he runs into this guy that I became acquainted with, who was the knife instructor for the SEALs. And so this guy thought, well, that might be the guy to give the knife to, so he can find somebody, find a Marine, you know. So this guy was clear back east, got the knife. He moves out west where I run into him. And the reason I knew him is because he's showing me how to knife fight. He'd give me some little training and tips and stuff. And it wasn't a big deal, and so I got to know him. And then about a year later, I see him and his wife drive up the driveway, and he gets out and he goes, tells me this story. He says, Artie, I found a home for the knife. He hands me this knife right here. And this is it.
That's
Marine
incredible.
Corps K-bar, 1944. And when he saw it in the sand, it looked like an old tarnished quarter. And he's just picking up a quarter, and he just pulls that thing out and you go, whoa, whoa. So somebody in the invasion that he was on lost their knife, and now is sitting right here in my motorcycle shop.
What a cool story.
Oh yeah. So I got some fake pineapple grenades to go around it and give it kind of a look. And eventually I'm hoping to build a little display cabinet for it and have that story in there. You know, so when I'm gone, the story can go along and maybe somebody else can get it and appreciate it.
Well, so here I just want to show a little bit of the cool bikes that he has here. So let's take a look at this one right here. Yeah, this blue one here.
Well, this one was actually gifted to me by a veterans organization. They had this was donated to him because the guy hadn't ridden it for 14 years and didn't really, he'd gotten old and stuff. So he wanted to donate it to a veterans organization rather than sell it. And they used it as a display and stuff to bring people in to get, you know, more money for their thing. What they do is they take veterans who are sick with cancer and they take them out hunting, and they make sure they get on an elk and get their elk, the last elk they'll get, you know. And they had this out there, and they could never. The guy who donated said he wants it to go to somebody who'll write it, and so they could never find anybody with cancer. You know, it had to go to somebody with cancer who was able to handle something like this. Is a badass chopper, you know. I said, you gotta drive this thing, you know. And so they couldn't find anybody who met the requirements, you know. They had to have cancer, they had to be a combat veteran, and they had to ride the bike. And so the guy was a friend of my son, and my son's talking to him, tells him his story about how he can't get rid of this perfect bike, and he goes, and he told him the requirements, and my son says, well, let's see. My dad's got cancer. He's a combat veteran. He just rode his chopper 8,000 miles this year. That's this one right here. And that particular year, I had done 8,000 miles on it. And so he says, we have a winner. And so there was this big party in Boise, and they had the newspaper out, and all my whole family came up, and I had no idea. And I'm standing there in front of the grandstand looking at this bike, and they're on the speakers, and I'm thinking, man, I wish I'd have bid on that thing. That's beautiful. I'd sure like to have gotten that. And he got, and then my son is up there with the microphone. He's going, yeah, and the guy who won it has got cancer. He's a combat veteran. And I'm thinking, man, this poor bastard, he's had a hard time.
He earned this bike.
He probably should have it, you know. And then he goes, my dad. And I'm standing around, almost, I couldn't believe it. And so then I had to sit on it, and they had these pretty models come out and take pictures, and then I had to drive it out of there. It wasn't running right. Carburetor had sat for 14 years, and I never could get the carburetor right. Finally, just had to buy a new one. And right now I'm working on the front forks, but I think this summer, I have ridden it around like in the parade and stuff, but I think this summer we're going to be able to ride it. Let me take a ride, a putt. And so that's how I wound up with a $42,000 bike, because to get it insured, I had to find out what it cost them to build it. It was $42,000. Man, I'm not gonna get something like this unless it just give it to me.
And lo and behold.
And lo and behold. So anyway, this is a picture of my class as we're going through basic infantry training. There's my graduation picture from the Marine Corps. Those are some of my awards, and then that's me in Vietnam on High Bomb Pass right there with a couple other fellas. And just stuff like that. This was kind of funny. We were in Sturgis. That's all the boys. We were in Sturgis, and we decided to photobomb the ZZ Top band. And so we were going to run up, got our picture taken by some girls who were in that front row. And the whole crowd goes wild. We don't know what's going on. So we go running out the side door, and we looking at the pictures the next day, and we realized we didn't photobomb ZZ Top. ZZ Top photobombed us. And that's why the crowd was going crazy. So anyway, that's just some of the stuff. Everything in here is just kind of I can look at everything and it's all good memories, and and then these are all pictures of where I've been, and I got the tape running up to them on the map. And that's just a work in progress.
Wow.
This is a funny picture right here. This is called Stoneville Saloon. It's on the 212, and it's in just outside the Indian reservation. And every place I've ever been for 40 years, there'd be some lawyer, and he's got this picture of Stoneville, and he's standing out in front of it with his bike. I go, wow, where's this? And he says, oh, it's Stoneville. All right. Or be it some real important guy, and there's Stoneville behind his desk on the counter. He goes, where is this place? And so we cut across the Indian reservation one time on the 212, start to Custer's Last Stand place, and run all the way to Sturgis. We're just blowing across this desert. All of a sudden, there's Stoneville out in the middle of the desert. There's nothing there. There's a little highway department thing and a little fence, and there's Stoneville, and they call it Stonies. And I have no idea. And I just hit the brakes, and I go skidding into this dirt lot, and turn around. My son's with me. He's going, what the hell's wrong with you, Pa? I go, that's Stonies. I gotta have a picture. And so I turned around. They got my picture right there in front of Stonies. It turns out if you're in Sturgis, you go out to Stonies, and there's turn left, and that takes you to Desert Tower. Desert Tower. Or no, Devil's Tower. And then you can come out at Sundance and take the highway back to the Sturgis, or the other way. But you always wind up at Stonies for a beer. And it says right on the front, it says, cheap drinks, lousy food. And then the whole floor is sawdust and peanut shells.
And they hold true to that value. Cheap drinks and lousy food.
Yeah. But the beer's ice cold. Ice freezing cold. And see, here's the boys, and they're out in front of there on one of them things. It's just a gag deal, and we're all on there carrying on. But this is the picture you see them all over the country, because that's where everybody stops when they go to Sturgis and they want to go to Devil's Tower. Get an ice cold beer. I had no idea.
I love it. That's awesome. Awesome. Well, I mean, you have so many stories, and we gotta record a bunch of them. But this was a cool start, and I thought Memorial Day was just
Memorial Day. You got a
perfect time to
get this guy's knife up there from Memorial Day.
Yeah, and you truly, somebody that's worthy of it from everything you've gone through. So
I got something to add to the knife.
Yeah, please.
See that little American flag underneath?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the story. That little American flag was what they had on top of Iwo Jima. And the commander goes up to the top of Iwo Jima at the end of all the battle, and everything's secured. He's going up to the top of Iwo Jima, and every Marine had one of those in his bag. And that was what some Marine had posted on a stick at the top of Sarabachi, the mountain. And so this commander's up there, and he sees this little tiny flag on a stick. He goes, no. And he orders a great big flag brought in. and they rig up a nice pole, and 5 guys start to get that thing stuck up there, and that's that statue of the 5 Marines raising the flag on Iwo Jima. Somebody took the picture of them. They'd just taken down that little flag, and they're putting up the big one.
And just to kind of get this straight, was that the actual
No.
flag there? No, that's what I was thinking. But it
No,
was
I
the
came
flag,
on to
flag
one
like that.
that
Yeah,
this is the right era,
yeah.
and this is the kind of flag that the Marines carried in their bag. And that's the type of flag, just like that was on Sarabachi. When the commander finally gets up to oversee this whole thing and see what's going on, he sees that little flag and he goes, "Nah, this is not gonna do." He orders a great big Navy flag to be brought in, and they set it up, and they're just starting to pull it. And then of course you got all your Life magazine reporters there, and they took a picture of these guys just getting it started, and that's the famous picture. They took down something like that and put the big one up.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got that underneath the knife, just to help it along.
Lot. Just to help it a lot. Just like it couldn't do it on its own. We
Well,
gotta add, yeah, that was awesome. Well, thank you so much. This
Yeah,
was really,
thank you
really
for
cool.
taking the time to do all this.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Really cool.